In the bustling heart of the city, where the lights flickered like distant stars, Allison lived a life that many would consider ordinary. She worked as a waitress in a quaint, upscale restaurant known for its exclusive clientele and lavish decor. Each evening, she maneuvered between tables, her mind focused on providing impeccable service while her heart yearned for something more than the monotonous rhythm of her daily routine. Little did she know that fate had something extraordinary in store for her. One fateful evening, as the sun dipped below the skyline, casting a golden hue across the city, the atmosphere in the restaurant shifted dramatically. The door swung open, and in walked Fodder Beloved, a name that whispered danger and power. With an imposing figure and an air of mystery surrounding him, he commanded attention without uttering a single word. His piercing gaze scanned the room until it settled on Allison, igniting an undeniable spark between them. Intrigued yet cautious, Allison felt her heartbeat quicken as she approached his table. She couldn't shake off the feeling that this man was not just another patron. He was different, dangerous yet captivating. As she served him, their eyes locked, and the world around them faded away. The tension between them crackled like electricity, leaving her both enchanted and wary. She stumbled over her words, a slight blush creeping onto her cheeks, but Fodder remained composed, a slight smirk playing at the corners of his lips. "What's your name?" he inquired, his voice low and smooth, sending chills down her spine. His eyes bore into hers, holding a depth that seemed to conceal 1,000 secrets. "Allison," she managed to reply, her voice barely above a whisper. She felt exposed under his scrutiny, yet something about him drew her in like a moth to a flame. As they exchanged small talk, she glanced at the other tables, noting the glances of other diners who seemed to recognize the power that emanated from him. It was the kind of power that could crush dreams and reshape destinies, but the moment was abruptly interrupted. Another man, seemingly oblivious to the charged atmosphere, approached and casually touched Allison's arm, attempting to flirt. The instant Fodder's gaze shifted toward the intruder, the atmosphere thickened with tension. His expression hardened, a flicker of possessiveness igniting in his eyes. It was as if the air had been sucked out of the room, the casual vibe of the restaurant replaced by an undercurrent of danger. "Excuse me," Fodder interjected, his voice low and menacing, freezing the other man in his tracks. The confidence that had once flowed freely from the intruder now faltered under the weight of Fodder's intense stare. Allison felt a strange thrill course through her as she watched the powerful man assert his dominance, a protective instinct emanating from him that was both exhilarating and terrifying. "Come here," Fodder commanded, his gaze returning to Allison, entirely dismissing the other man. She felt compelled to obey, the authority in his voice resonating deep within her. As she moved closer, her heart raced, caught between the thrill of attraction and the awareness of the peril that came with it. "Don't let anyone else touch you," he said, his tone firm yet laced with a hint of something softer, as if he understood the unspoken connection that had sparked between them and the danger that surrounded it. The weight of his words lingered in the air, creating an unshakable tension that felt like an unspoken promise. Before she could respond, the moment became even more charged. It was clear that Fodder was a man accustomed to getting what he wanted, and he seemed to want her. As their conversation continued, the restaurant buzzed around them, but all she could focus on was the magnetic pull he had on her. She found herself captivated by his charisma, yet part of her remained wary of the darkness that lurked beneath his polished surface. "Before you skip, just remember, channels like this only survive if you hit subscribe. Otherwise, stories like this one just disappear," she thought to herself, feeling an odd connection to the narrative unfolding before her. The evening wore on, and as she cleared his table, every interaction felt charged with a dangerous allure that left her breathless. It was a world she had never known, filled with secrets and power, a world that was both enticing and terrifying. As she glanced back at Fodder, she realized that this was just the beginning of a journey that would change her life forever. Yet, even amidst the excitement, doubts crept into her mind. What did it mean to get involved with someone like him? The thrill was intoxicating, but the risks were palpable. As she returned to the kitchen to refill her tray, She couldn't shake the feeling that she had crossed an invisible line, stepping into a realm where she was entangled with a man who lived by a different set of rules. Outside, the city pulsed with life, oblivious to the unfolding drama inside the restaurant. Allison stood at the threshold, her heart racing as she took a moment to collect herself. The night had transformed from mundane to mysterious in a matter of moments, and she was left wondering what the future held. Little did she know, she had caught the attention of a man who was used to having everything under his control, and he had no intention of letting her go. As the evening unfolded, the restaurant buzzed with life, yet the world around Allison felt strangely distant. She couldn't shake off the magnetic pull of Fodder belove's gaze. It was as if the air between them crackled with an unspoken energy, drowning out the laughter and clinking of glasses that filled the upscale dining room. Each moment she spent near him deepened her intrigue and anxiety. Why did he have such an effect on her? What was it about this man that made her heart race uncontrollably? Allison moved around the tables, serving food and drinks, her mind constantly drifting back to the enigmatic man who had captured her attention so completely. His presence loomed larger than life, casting a shadow over her mundane existence as a waitress. She focused on her tasks, but every few minutes, her eyes would flicker toward his table, where he sat with an air of confident superiority. The way he commanded the space around him was intoxicating, a subtle reminder that he was not just any ordinary diner. The restaurant was a hub of wealth and sophistication, filled with patrons who were unaware of the undercurrents lurking beneath the surface. As she refilled glasses and delivered plates, she felt a mix of thrill and trepidation. It was exhilarating to be so close to someone so dangerously intriguing, yet a small voice in her head warned her of the potential consequences. She had heard the whispers about men like him, powerful, wealthy, and often involved in dark dealings. But something about Fodder felt different. He seemed to possess a fierceness tempered by a strange gentleness when he looked at her. Their brief exchanges had been charged, layered with an intensity that left her breathless. Yet, she was still trying to decipher whether the connection was real or merely a figment of her imagination. It was not until the other man approached her, casually brushing his fingers against her arm, that the reality of her situation struck her like a cold splash of water. The instant Fodder's gaze shifted to the intruder, the vibrant atmosphere of the restaurant transformed into something more dangerous. "Excuse me," Fodder interjected, his voice low and menacing, freezing the other man mid-sentence. The confidence that had once poured from him evaporated under Fodder's penetrating stare. Allison could feel the tension ramping up, hanging thick in the air, and for a heartbeat, she was caught between two worlds, the mundane and the perilous. The other man faltered, his bravado collapsing in an instant as he recognized the authority that emanated from Fodder. It was a sight to behold, the dynamic shift in the room, as if they were characters in a play and Fodder was the inevitable lead. "Don't touch her," Fodder said. His words dripped with a protective menace that sent shivers down Allison's spine. The way he spoke was both a command and a warning, sending a clear message that she was off-limits. In that moment, she felt an odd thrill coursing through her veins, a mixture of excitement and fear. Why did this possessiveness both alarm and attract her? It was a feeling she had never encountered before, stirring something deep within her. Allison glanced sideways at Fodder, her heart racing as their eyes locked again. He leaned closer, and she could see the sharp angles of his jaw, the intensity in his dark eyes that held 1,000 unspoken promises. "Come here," he commanded, creating a physical barrier between her and the other man. Without even thinking about it, she stepped closer to him, feeling the weight of his gaze like an embrace. His presence wrapped around her, protective yet ferocious. "Don't let anyone else touch you," he said, his words embedding themselves deep within her heart. There was a softness in his tone that belied the strength of his command. It left her breathless, a promise hung unspoken in the air. The intensity of the moment was palpable, and she could sense the curiosity and jealousy flickering in the eyes of the other diners. Was this how he operated, with a fierce need to protect what was his? The thought both thrilled and terrified her, igniting a spark of defiance within her. Allison realized that Fodder was not just a powerful figure, he was a storm, and she was caught in its eye. There was no denying the attraction that surged between them, but a part of her remained cautious, reminding her of the dangers associated with men like him. Yet, as she stood there, enveloped in his aura, she questioned her reservations. Perhaps there was more to him than what met the eye. Each fleeting moment felt like an eternity, and she wondered what the future held for them. She could almost hear the whispers of those around her, tantalizing her with notions of passion, danger, and a life full of excitement, if only she dared to take the plunge. If you're enjoying this story, don't forget to hit that like button to help it keep going, she thought, recognizing the importance of connection in her own life. As her shift continued, the reality of her day-to-day life began to fade. The line between her ordinary existence and the magnetic allure of Fodder blurred, leaving her breathless and yearning for more. The din of the restaurant faded into white noise, and she found herself losing track of time. It was as if the universe conspired to bring their paths together, but she couldn't shake the feeling that she was stepping into uncharted waters. This man was powerful, dangerous, and undeniably captivating. Allison felt the weight of her normal life, the responsibilities and the mundane routines. Still, Fodder's presence offered a tantalizing escape from it all. Little did she know, she was on the brink of a whirlwind that would irrevocably change her life. As she served him and their eyes met once more, she couldn't help but wonder what would happen next. With a heart full of anticipation and fear, she realized that this was only the beginning, and she was ready to embrace whatever came next. As the days passed, Allison found herself lost in thought, her mind echoing with memories of Fodder. Each shift at the restaurant became a countdown to the moments she might catch a glimpse of him walking through those doors again. She was acutely aware of her heart racing whenever she spotted him, and the way her breath caught in her throat made her realize just how deeply their brief encounters had affected her. Little did she know, Fodder was not just a fleeting distraction, but a force that would soon pull her into a world she never knew existed. Meanwhile, Fodder was navigating his own stormy waters. Despite the luxurious surroundings of his lavish office, where the soft glow of the city lights streamed through the glass walls, his thoughts were consumed by thoughts of Allison. He found himself in meetings with his associates, but his mind was elsewhere, searching for ways to see her again. He was used to having everything under control, but for the first time, he felt a sense of longing that was both exhilarating and terrifying. The thought of her independence intrigued him, and as the conversations around him blurred into dull murmurs, he made a decision. He had to see her again. Fate intervened on a seemingly ordinary evening as he returned to the restaurant. The moment he stepped inside, the familiar aroma of fine food and the soft chatter of the patrons enveloped him, but all of that faded into the background when his eyes landed on Allison. She was busy at her station, serving drinks and chatting with other guests, but there was a spark in her eyes that drew him in. It was as if the world around them vanished, leaving just the two of them in their own bubble. As she approached his table, her cheeks flushed with a hint of excitement, Fodder felt a wave of warmth wash over him. She was dressed simply, yet her confidence radiated, making her all the more captivating. "Back for another meal?" she asked with a playful smile, a hint of challenge in her tone. He admired her spirit, and a smirk crept across his lips as he replied, "Only if you're my server again." Their conversation flowed effortlessly as they exchanged banter, each word charged with an electric energy that made the world outside feel irrelevant. For Allison, it felt as if she were walking a tightrope, balancing between the thrill of this unexpected connection and the inherent risks that came with it. Fodder was an enigma, and she found herself wanting to unravel him piece by piece. "So, what keeps a man like you coming to a place like this?" she asked, her curiosity piqued. Fodder leaned in closer, his voice low and inviting. "Perhaps I'm looking for something or someone." The intensity of his gaze made her heart race, and she felt a blend of excitement and caution. There was something about him, an allure mixed with danger, that both fascinated and frightened her. The rest of the world faded into a blur, and for that moment, nothing else mattered. As they spoke, Fodder became increasingly aware of the way the other patrons regarded them. He could feel the whispers and glances, but it only fueled his desire to keep Allison close. Just as he was about to dive deeper into a personal story, the same man from before approached their table, a confident swagger in his step that set Fodder on edge. "Hey, beautiful, why don't you come over here instead?" he said, reaching out to touch Allison's arm. The moment the other man's fingers brushed her skin, Fodder's demeanor shifted. A cold fury ignited within him, and he stood abruptly, his imposing figure casting a shadow over the smaller man. "I think it's time for you to leave." Fodder's voice was a low rumble, filled with the kind of authority that left no room for argument. The tension in the room thickened as the other man's bravado crumbled beneath Fodder's intense glare. Allison's heart raced as she watched the exchange unfold. She felt a rush of adrenaline as Fodder stepped protectively in front of her, effectively claiming her space. The thrilling realization hit her that she was entangled in something far more complex than a mere flirtation. She was standing at the precipice of a dangerous yet exhilarating world. "You don't want to mess with me," Fodder warned, his voice firm and unyielding. The intruder took a hesitant step back, sensing the shift in power, and ultimately retreated, leaving behind a tense silence. "Are you okay?" Fodder asked, his voice dropping to a more gentle tone as he turned to face Allison. There was a vulnerability in his eyes that she hadn't seen before, and it surprised her. It was a brief moment of softness that contrasted sharply with the fierce protector he had just demonstrated to be. "I'm fine," she replied, her voice steady, even as her heart raced. The thrill of the confrontation sent a shiver down her spine, but she knew this was only the beginning of something much larger. Fodder stepped closer, and she could feel the heat radiating off him. "I won't let anyone touch you," he declared, his commitment resonating in her chest like a vow. The weight of his promise sank in, and the thrill of it both excited and frightened her. Here was a man who lived in a world of shadows and danger, yet he was offering her a glimpse of something real amidst the chaos. As the evening wore on, they resumed their conversation, but the undercurrents of tension shifted. Allison found herself leaning into Fodder, wanting to understand more about him. "Why do you look for something or someone?" she pressed gently, curious despite the stirring conflict within her. Fodder hesitated, as if weighing the cost of his truth. "Because sometimes it's the things we can't have that pull us in the most," he admitted, his voice laced with a vulnerability that surprised him. Each word felt laden with meaning, and Allison sensed the struggle within him. As she gazed into his deep eyes, she realized she was standing at the crossroads of her life. She could feel the pull of danger, excitement, and romance swirling around them. "If you're enjoying this story, don't forget to hit that like button to help it keep going," she thought, recognizing the importance of connection in her own life. And as the night deepened, so did her desire to know Fodder and herself, in ways she had never imagined possible. The gravity of their connection hinted at a fate that intertwined their lives, leading her to wonder just how far she was willing to go for the enigmatic man who had claimed her attention so wholly. As the evening progressed, the atmosphere within the upscale nightclub pulsed with an electric energy. Dazzling lights flickered against the darkened walls, and the rhythmic sound of music enveloped the room like an embrace. The vibrant crowd danced, laughed, and reveled in their freedom, but for Allison, the energy felt charged with an undertone of danger that made her heart race. Fodder, ever the imposing figure, seemed to absorb the ambience, his presence dominating the space around him. Allison could sense the shift in the atmosphere as Fodder's attention sharpened. He was no longer just a captivating stranger. He had become a formidable force to be reckoned with. She had witnessed it earlier when he had confronted that other man at the restaurant, and now the glimmers of his true nature began to unfold before her eyes. What had originally felt like an exhilarating flirtation now teetered on the edge of something darker, something exciting yet terrifying. "Stay close to me," he instructed, his voice a low murmur in her ear, causing shivers to run down her spine. "I'll make sure you are safe." The weight of his words settled heavily on her, a promise wrapped in veiled threats. She nodded, feeling a mixture of excitement and trepidation. The thrill of being desired by such a powerful man was intoxicating, but it was also laced with an unsettling awareness of the danger that surrounded him. As they made their way through the throng of bodies, Fodder remained alert, scanning the room. Allison couldn't help but notice how the patrons instinctively stepped aside, parting for him as if he were a king among commoners. It was in these moments that she realized the extent of his influence. It was palpable, almost suffocating. The fleeting glances from others made her feel like a treasure possessed by a powerful pirate, a mix of pride and fear bubbling within her. But then, just as quickly as the adrenaline surged, a group of men she did not recognize entered the nightclub. Their presence was marked by an air of hostility, a stark contrast to the vibrant celebration around them. Fodder's demeanor changed instantly, the warmth fading from his eyes, replaced by a sharp, predatory focus. "Do not look at them," he instructed, his voice firm, leaving no room for disobedience. The protective authority in his tone sent another wave of excitement racing through her. Despite his warning, curiosity overwhelmed Allison. She glanced at the newcomers, noting their confident swagger as they scanned the room. One of them, a tall man with a menacing smirk, locked eyes with her. The recognition felt electric, but she couldn't place where she had seen him before. In that moment, Fodder turned, his gaze fixed on her, and a low growl escaped his throat, like a wolf issuing a warning. "They're not here for fun," he said, barely concealing the tension in his voice. The atmosphere shifted, thickening as the men approached. Allison's pulse quickened. A danger she had only glimpsed earlier was now looming large before her. "Stay behind me," Fodder ordered as he positioned himself between her and the approaching men. It was an act of protection, but it was also an assertion of dominance. The way he took command of the situation was both admirable and frightening. "Look who we have here," the tall man taunted, his eyes glinting with malice. The big boss himself, hiding behind his little lady. There was a ripple of laughter from his companions, and for a moment Allison felt exposed, vulnerable. She reached out, placing a hand on Fodder's back, silently urging him to remain calm. "Leave now, Sergei," Fodder commanded, his voice low but edged with authority. The tension escalated, and the nightclub's music seemed to fade into a distant hum. She could see the muscles in Fodder's jaw tense, and the air crackled with unspoken threats. "Or what?" Sergei sneered, stepping forward as if testing Fodder's resolve. "You'll protect her? How cute!" The laughter that followed rang hollow, and the atmosphere shifted from playful to perilous in an instant. Allison's heart raced as she glanced between the two men. She wanted to speak, to say something, but the gravity of the situation held her tongue captive. Fodder's body radiated tension, and she could sense the struggle within him. The fierceness of his gaze bore into Sergei, yet there was a flicker of vulnerability when he turned slightly toward Allison, as if gauging her reaction. "Fodder," she whispered, the fear creeping into her voice, but he turned sharply to silence her with a look. In that moment, she realized that she was standing on a precipice, caught between the danger of the world Fodder inhabited and the urgency of her own feelings for him. "Walk away, Sergei. This is the last time I'll tell you," Fodder warned, his voice steady but laced with an undercurrent of fury. The other man's bravado faltered for just a heartbeat, a flicker of uncertainty crossing his face. "Consider this a warning, Fodder," Sergei shot back, his bravado returning. "Next time it won't just be words." With that, he gestured for his group to follow, and they turned to leave, but not without casting one last lingering look at Allison that sent chills down her spine. As they retreated, Fodder turned to her, the fierce protector that had emerged moments before now softened by concern. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice low, the tension dissipating slightly. "I am now," she managed to say, her heart still racing. The thrill of being at the center of such chaos, of being cared for by someone so powerful, left her breathless. She was drawn to him, not just as a man, but as a force of nature. In a heartbeat, she had crossed into a world where danger was ever present, but so was desire. She knew that the night had changed everything. The conflict around them had revealed the stakes of their connection, making it clear that their lives were now intertwined in ways she never anticipated. It was exhilarating and terrifying, leaving her with a sense of clarity. She would not turn away from what was happening here. The choices they made now would define their futures. If you're enjoying this story, make sure to hit that like button to help it keep going, she thought, recognizing the importance of support as she navigated this uncharted territory. As Fodder pulled her closer, she felt the promise of more to come, a dance of danger, desire, and an undeniable connection that would alter the course of their lives forever. The atmosphere shifted dramatically as Fodder squared off against Sergei, the tension palpable like a taut wire ready to snap. With the nightclub's pulsating lights casting fleeting shadows, the world around them blurred, leaving only the two of them and the looming threat in front of them. Fodder's presence was magnetic, yet there was an edge of desperation in his eyes that Allison had never seen before. It was as if he was not just fighting for her safety, but for the very essence of who he was. Sergei's laughter echoed mockingly around the dimly lit space. "You think you can scare me, Fodder? You've always been good at pretending." His voice dripped with contempt, the bravado only serving to mask the unease that lay beneath. Fodder's posture was rigid, a storm brewing just beneath the surface. The men behind Sergei shifted slightly, a silent threat that spoke volumes. "Listen to me," Fodder said, his voice low but laced with authority. "You don't want to make this personal." It was a warning, one that resonated deeply in the charged air. Allison felt a chill run down her spine. The stakes were higher than she could have imagined, and she was caught in the crossfire of a power struggle that was far beyond her comprehension. Personal. "You've made it personal the moment you walked in here with her," Sergei retorted, gesturing dismissively at Allison, who felt the weight of his gaze bearing down on her. Her heart raced with fear and adrenaline, and she instinctively moved closer to Fodder, seeking the protection he so readily offered. The magnetic pull between them was undeniable, ignited further by the danger that surrounded them. "Don't you dare speak to her like that," Fodder growled, taking a step forward, his body tense with rage. The air around them thickened with unspoken threats, and for a moment, time stood still. The club's music faded away, replaced only by the thudding of her heart in her ears. She could sense Fodder's protective instincts flaring, a primal need to defend what was his. "Fodder, please," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the rising tension. "Let's just go." The plea escaped her lips instinctively, but he shook his head, determination etched across his face. He would not back down. This was about more than just her safety. "Leave now, Sergei, before this escalates," Fodder warned, his voice steady. But there was a flicker of uncertainty in Sergei's eyes, a crack in the facade that suggested he was weighing his options. The standoff felt electric, and Allison's mind raced as she considered the potential consequences of this confrontation. "Or what? You'll unleash your little charm on me," Sergei taunted, his bravado faltering for just a moment. "I'm not afraid of you, Fodder." "We both know how this game ends." The words hung in the air, heavy with implications. In that charged moment, Allison felt as if the world had narrowed to just the three of them, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. "Fodder," she said again, this time with more urgency. She reached for him, her hand brushing against his arm, grounding both of them in a moment of vulnerability amidst the chaos. "We can walk away, we don't have to do this." But deep down, she understood that Fodder couldn't simply walk away. It was against every fiber of his being. "No," he said fiercely, his eyes blazing with intensity. "I won't let them threaten you. Not now, not ever." The fire in his voice ignited something within her, a mix of fear and admiration. This man who commanded so much power and respect was willing to risk it all for her. Suddenly, Sergei lunged forward, and in a flash, Fodder moved, placing himself between them. The protective stance was instinctive, and in that moment, Allison saw the depth of his commitment. He wasn't just a boss, he was a man willing to fight for what he cared about. The clarity of her feelings surged, overwhelming her with emotion. She was in the middle of something extraordinary and terrifying. This was no ordinary night. "Back off," Fodder warned, his voice low and dangerous. The energy in the room shifted again, anticipation electrifying the air. Sergei paused, caught off guard by Fodder's unyielding stance, and for a brief moment, the tension felt like it could snap at any moment. Just when it seemed like Sergei would back down, he turned slightly, glancing at his crew. This isn't over, Fodder, he spat before waving his men to follow him out of the nightclub. The threat lingered, but for now they had retreated, leaving Fodder and Allison in the eye of the storm. As the tension began to dissipate, Fodder turned to her, his features softening. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice low and filled with concern. The protective barrier he had built around her began to retreat as he focused solely on her. "I am now," she replied, her heart still racing. The thrill of danger coursed through her veins, a mix of fear and exhilaration that she had never experienced before. She was drawn to Fodder not just as a protector, but as a man who faced danger head-on, who stood strong despite the chaos. "If you're enjoying this story, make sure to hit that like button to help it keep going," she thought, realizing that this was just the beginning. The connection they shared felt electric, pulling her deeper into a world that was as dangerous as it was intoxicating. As Fodder pulled her closer, she felt the promise of more to come, a journey filled with peril, passion, and a connection that would redefine everything she thought she knew about love. After the chaotic confrontation at the nightclub, Fodder and Allison found themselves in a quiet corner of the world that felt distinctly their own. The music still pulsed through the walls, vibrating lightly beneath their feet, but it was as if a bubble had formed around them, isolating them from the turmoil outside. They were still catching their breaths, adrenaline coursing through their veins, but the gravity of what had just transpired began to seep into their minds. "Are you sure you're okay?" Fodder's voice was low, a mixture of concern and command, grounding her in the moment. He searched her eyes as if looking for something to reassure him that she was unharmed. Allison took a deep breath, feeling the weight of his gaze. "I am now," she replied, her heart still racing from the encounter. The excitement had stirred something deep inside her, something she had never felt before, a thrill that was both terrifying and intoxicating. She was drawn to him, not just as a protector, but as a man who had faced danger head-on and emerged stronger. He stepped closer, allowing the space between them to shrink, intensifying the pulse of their connection. "You shouldn't have to deal with this," he said, his tone softer now. "I didn't bring you into this world to expose you to its dangers." She shook her head, determined to meet his gaze with equal intensity. "You didn't choose this for me, Fodder. But it's happening now, and I can't just pretend it doesn't exist." The spark between them was undeniable, ignited further by the danger that surrounded them. "Then we need to be careful," he said, the weight of his words hanging in the air. "This isn't a game. I deal with people who don't take threats lightly." The seriousness in his voice made her heart flutter, a mix of fear and admiration. This was a man who was accustomed to power, to control, and yet here he was, laying bare his vulnerabilities before her. She reached out, resting a hand on his arm. "I want to understand," she said, her voice earnest. "I want to be a part of your world, but I need to know why it's so dangerous." The depth of her resolve surprised even her. The connection they shared was growing stronger, a bond forged in the fires of uncertainty and desire. Fodder hesitated, his expression revealing a flicker of internal conflict. He was a man who had built walls around himself, and now, with her, it felt like those walls were beginning to crack. "It's not just about danger, Allison. It's about loyalty, power, and the things I've done to survive." The truth lingered in the air between them, heavy and palpable. Allison could see the shadows of his past in his eyes, the scars of choices made in desperation. "You don't have to carry that alone," she whispered, an invitation woven into her words. "Let me in." She didn't know where the courage was coming from, but she felt a pull toward him that was irresistible. In that moment, Fodder took a subtle step closer, their breaths mingling in the air. "I don't want to put you at risk," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, "but I can't deny what I feel for you." It was a confession that hung between them, charged with electricity. The reality of their situation was stark, but the chemistry was undeniable. Just then, a distant rumble of thunder echoed outside, a reminder of the storm brewing above. Allison could feel an unsettling mix of excitement and trepidation. "If you're enjoying this story, make sure to hit that like button to help it keep going." She laughed nervously, trying to lighten the mood, but Fodder's piercing gaze softened at her attempt to ease the tension. He brushed a strand of hair behind her ear, his fingers lingering against her skin. "You're different from anyone I've ever met," he said, awe threading through his tone. "Most people wouldn't dare to tread where you have." His compliment made her heart swell, igniting a warmth that spread through her body. "You make me feel alive, Fodder," she admitted, the honesty spilling from her lips. "I've always played it safe, but with you, I want to take risks." It was a revelation, a truth she hadn't fully acknowledged until this moment. The thrill of being with him was unlike anything she had ever experienced. As the storm continued to rage outside, Fodder took a decisive step back, his demeanor shifting slightly. "There are things I need to tell you," he began, his tone serious again. "Things that could change everything you think you know about me." Her heart raced, not out of fear, but with a readiness to confront whatever truth lay ahead. "I'm listening. You deserve to know the risks, the stakes, and the choices I've made," he said, the gravity of his words anchoring them both. "But I need you to promise me that you'll be careful, that you won't let yourself get caught in the crossfire. This life isn't just glamorous, it's dangerous and unforgiving." Allison nodded, her resolve solidifying. "I can handle it. I've faced challenges before." He studied her for a long moment, the weight of his past pressing heavily on his shoulders. "Then let's face this together," he said finally, a sense of determination filling his voice. "But know that I will do everything in my power to protect you." With those words, a new chapter began to unfold between them, one filled with possibilities and uncertainties. They stood there, side by side, ready to face whatever came next, armed with the strength of their burgeoning love. The future was still shrouded in mystery, but one thing was certain: together they could endure anything. As the rain continued to pour outside, creating a soft drumroll against the glass windows, Fodder and Allison stood together, contemplating the journey that had brought them to this moment. The atmosphere was thick with unspoken words and shared fears, but also a burgeoning hope that made the air crackle with possibility. The storm outside mirrored the tempest of emotions swirling within them, a chaotic blend of desire and uncertainty. Fodder gazed deeply into Allison's eyes, the flickering lights of the city casting a warm glow on their faces. "You know," he began, his voice low and steady, "this world I live in is not just dangerous. It's a treacherous game where trust is a luxury I can seldom afford." There was a gravity to his words that resonated with Allison, sending shivers down her spine. She had seen glimpses of the darkness that surrounded him, but hearing it acknowledged brought a new level of understanding. "I see it, Fodder," she replied softly, her heart racing. "But I also see you, the man behind the mask. You're not just a mob boss, you're someone who has fought hard to survive." This recognition surprised even her, but it was the truth. Fodder's strength and vulnerability had ignited a spark in her that she had never felt before, and she was determined not to shy away from it. He looked at her with a mixture of admiration and something akin to fear. "I want to keep you safe, Allison, but the more you learn, the more tangled you become in this web of crime and power. I don't want to drag you into my world, but the thought of losing you terrifies me." His confession hung in the air, heavy with emotion. Allison took a step closer, her resolve solidifying. "I didn't ask for this life, but I want you, Fodder. I want to be with you even if it means facing the dangers that come along with it. If we're going to do this, we need to do it together." The sincerity in her voice was palpable, and Fodder felt something shift within him, a sense of hope igniting in the depths of his soul. "You're brave," he said, admiration lacing his tone. "That's one of the many things I love about you." His words sent warmth flooding through her, but the underlying tension of their situation remained. The reality was that they were standing on the precipice of something monumental, and the weight of their choices hung over them like a gathering storm. Just as they were about to share a kiss, the moment was interrupted by the shattering sound of glass breaking from outside. They both jumped, instinctively moving closer together. "What was that?" Allison asked, her heart pounding in her chest. Fodder's expression hardened, the protective instinct kicking in as he spun toward the source of the noise. "Stay here," he commanded, his voice low and authoritative, but there was a flicker of concern in his eyes. "I need to check it out." "No," she protested, grabbing his arm. "You're not leaving me here alone." The urgency in her tone reflected her determination to stand by his side, no matter what came next. He studied her for a moment, weighing the risks. "Allison, I can't. I know you want to protect me," she interrupted, her eyes fierce. "But I want to face this with you. I won't be a damsel in distress." The tension between them crackled as Fodder's resolve softened. "All right," he finally conceded, nodding. "But promise me you'll stay behind me." "I promise," she said, squeezing his hand tightly. The air in the room felt charged as they moved toward the door, ready to confront whatever awaited them outside. They stepped out into the hall, the adrenaline surging through their veins. Fodder led the way, his instincts honed for danger, while Allison followed closely, the thrill of fear and excitement propelling her forward. They descended the staircase, the sound of their footsteps echoing ominously in the silence. Each creak of the wood beneath their feet seemed magnified, heightening their senses as they approached the front entrance. As they reached the door, Fodder paused, turning to face Allison. "Whatever happens out there, remember that I'm here. We're in this together." His words were a promise, a commitment that anchored them both against the uncertainty that lay ahead. With a deep breath, he flung open the door, and the rain poured into the hallway, mingling with the adrenaline coursing through their bodies. What they found outside was a scene of chaos. A shattered window, remnants of shattered glass scattered like confetti on the pavement, and the blurred silhouette of a figure disappearing into the shadows. "Who is that?" Allison gasped, her heart racing as she peered into the night. Fodder's eyes narrowed, the instincts of a predator rising within him. "We need to find out." Allison felt a surge of bravery push her forward. "Let's go," she urged, ready to face whatever danger lingered in the darkness, side by side with the man she had come to love. As they moved cautiously down the steps, the rain drenched them, but it felt cleansing, revitalizing. This was a step towards a future filled with uncertainty, but also with an undeniable bond that had formed between them through the chaos of their lives. Despite the impending danger, Allison's heart swelled with hope. It was a feeling she had never expected to find in such a perilous situation. "If you're enjoying this story, make sure to hit that like button to help it keep going," she called out, half joking to lighten the tension, but the sentiment was real. Fodder chuckled softly, despite the seriousness of their situation. "You really are something else, you know that." His eyes sparkled with admiration as they prepared to step into the unknown. Together they faced the storm, ready to confront whatever was waiting for them, united in their love and determination to overcome the challenges that lay ahead. With each step, the future seemed not just uncertain but also thrillingly full of possibility. The night was still young, and they had each other.